All right, folks, hello and welcome back to online English class. Today is Monday, May 11th, all right, and we are going to be finishing up our study of Heart of Darkness with our last OTN 9 today, okay? We'll be working on OTN 9 today and tomorrow, and then we will be reviewing for your Unit 6 test on Wednesday, preparing for it, talking about the prompt that you're going to write in response to on that test, talking about some strategies for structuring your response effectively and clearly on Wednesday, and then you'll be taking that test, writing that test on Thursday and Friday, okay? So before we get into finishing up our analysis of Heart of Darkness, which analyzes Part 3, the resolution, the final scene of the novel, let's talk through the top of the week announcements, okay? So we can make sure we have a clear understanding of what's coming in front of us, all right? First of all, make sure that you are daily engaging with your discussion grade tasks, okay? Beyond that, make sure that you send me email confirmation of your completion of OTNs 8 and 9 by Wednesday at 3 p.m. By Wednesday, we'll be done with our work, all right? We'll be finishing up on Tuesday, so by Wednesday, you should be able to send me an email confirming the fact that you have done so, okay? In the meantime, you need to make sure that you're continuing to complete your OTNs as we complete them in class. The last work that you'll need to do on that is for OTN 9, okay? Beyond that, you need to make sure that you are preparing for your Unit 6 test, okay? You can use the Unit 6 review guide, which is attached on RenWeb, okay? Please don't miss out on this. So you'll find the review guide labeled honors or regular according to the class that you are in, and that will have the prompt that you are going to write in response to for your test published on it, along with some additional information about composition skills and knowledge that you'll need to have in order to write an effective response to the essay prompt. You can go ahead and download that attachment. You can begin the process of outlining and considering how you're going to respond to that essay prompt for your test, okay? Now, beyond that, finally, you've got your last formal essay, okay? So not a test essay, right, that you write in a couple days, but a formal essay that you should have been drafting and working on over the course of the entire quarter, okay? That's going to be due from May 18th to May 22nd. So when we're done with the Unit 6 test, we're going to turn our attention to preparation for and drafting this quarter 4 essay, okay? So you should already have a rough draft in hand whenever May 18th rolls around, and the last day that you can submit that to me is May 22nd without incurring a late penalty. If you submit it to me on May 23rd or May 24th or May 25th, then you will incur a late penalty that's going to penalize you a letter grade every day that it's late until it's 4 days late, and you will receive a 0. Okay, so let's not do that. All right, so make sure that you are faithfully working on this. Okay, but more immediately. Okay, let's finish our work on OTN 9 and finish our analysis of Heart of Darkness, the novel as a whole. Now, before we get into analyzing the details of Marlowe's final action in the novel, which is to lie to Kurtz's fiance about the kind of man that he was, the kind of man that Marlowe discovered Kurtz to be in his experiences with Kurtz in the Congo, we just want to spend some time discussing this scene and how this scene fits into Marlowe's larger journey as a whole. Okay, so we're going to do that by walking through an SQ3R. Okay, so as usual, we're going to start by discussing the speaker. Okay, now we know who the speaker is for this text. It's the first-person narrator, which is to say a narrator who is telling a story that happened to them. They're telling it from their own first-person perspective. Okay, and that narrator's name is Marlowe. He is the protagonist. He is the sort of main struggler in the narrative, and he is struggling to find some kind of meaning, to understand what it means to be a person, what it means to be a man. Okay, and in the last portion of his journey, all right, in the falling action in which Kurtz dies and has his moment of anagnorisis, in which he famously proclaims that life is a horror, a kind of dual horror. Okay, Marlowe sits with Kurtz as they are journeying out of the Congo, and Kurtz is dying. Okay, to quickly review. So Kurtz speaks to Marlowe about all his great plans and emphasizes the importance of working with quote-unquote right motives. All right, so that was in the text that we discussed yesterday. And when we talk about right motives, what we mean, okay, what this kind of language points to is this distinctly human capacity to align your actions, right? You got your actions down here. okay? And you want your actions to align with an ultimate purpose, okay? These actions then therefore become meaningful. They are right. They are justified with a ultimate purpose that is good, okay? That's what it means in part to be a good man, to live in light of those right motives, okay? But to do so presupposes a kind of moral pretension, all right, that Marlowe has discovered does not exist, and that Kurtz rejected while he cut people's heads off and stuck them on stakes while he was in the Congo, stealing all the ivory in the country and simply just raiding it and killing anyone who stood in his way, right? Even those who followed him, like the Harlequin, right? You got some ivory, I'll shoot you if you don't give it to me. Okay, here you go, right? Obviously, to think that an action can be quote-unquote right presupposes that there is such a thing as right and wrong, and that also presupposes that there's some kind of standard by which we as human beings can evaluate our actions reliably and come to valid conclusions about what is right and what is wrong. Okay, so here Kurtz is kind of expressing this distinctly human capacity to evaluate his actions and to attempt to live in a morally comprehensible way. He has recovered his moral pretensions. Okay. But even as he says those kinds of things, he also says competing or opposite kinds of things. Like, for instance, I'm going to wring the heart out of the wilderness, right? I'll wring the heart out of you yet, he says out of the window, irrationally to the wilderness itself, to the natural world itself, an expression of his sort of insatiable will to power, his insatiable amoral pursuit of pleasure, power, and the fulfillment of his desires for dominion. Okay, so these things come off as the ravings of a kind of insane person. All right. And this contributes to Marlowe's final understanding of Kurtz as an embodiment of the human condition, a kind of universal genius in that sense, in that Kurtz has this kind of rich and profound understanding of what it means to be a person, and what it means to be a person in the end, for Marlowe, as revealed to him by Kurtz, is to be fractured, to have a heart that is split in two, to have a heart that is ambivalent, pulled in opposite directions in equally forceful ways. Okay, it's simultaneously drawn toward this amoral, bestial life of abject freedom that is reflected in the laws of the natural world, which, according to the modern nihilist, was not created by an ultimate purpose giver, but rather simply exists. And it exists simply governed by one rule: the survival of the fittest. Go and survive, right? That's an amoral kind of maxim, right? But the human being also, right, their fractured heart, this kind of broken heart, right, also is compulsively driven or desires to assert its own individuality. What I mean by that, okay, is not like, look, I'm wearing, I have a mohawk, I'm an individual, right? What I mean by that is the human being is compelled, and this is represented all throughout human culture and art and philosophy and religion, compelled to assert the fact that it is different than every other kind of living creature in the cosmos. All right, that it is individual, it is distinct, and it is compelled to value itself as unique. And uniquely, okay, unique in that it is moral and spiritual, okay? Unique in that it is moral and spiritual, okay? So this is dramatized by Kurtz's, this sort of fractured heart, follow me here, is dramatized by Kurtz's simultaneous pull, all right, in two directions. One, into the Congo, that strips him of his pretenses and any vain beliefs in his immortal spirit. Okay, but also his eventual decision, all right, so he's pulled that way, right, to crawl back into the Congo and embrace the bestial life that is a reflection of the truth of the natural world that he lives in. But in the end, right, he is pulled back toward Europe. Okay, that is not to say that his pull towards Europe is ultimately wins out, that he's ultimately redeemed. No. He dies in a place where he is expressing both of these pools equally forcefully, equally wholeheartedly. All right, so it's again, his choice to return to Europe is not like a final rejection of his lust for power, but rather, all right, an indication that Kurtz, like all men, has both of these impulses in him, and he is constantly seeking after both simultaneously, ripping his own heart apart, if you will. Okay, why does he go back to Europe? Well, because he wants to be remembered as a great man, as a good man. All right, again, a kind of testimony to this sort of vanity, this sort of moral pretension that for some reason human beings are capable of saying words like great and good and capable of thinking about things like words like spirit and immortal. And for some reason, right, though the world itself, right, doesn't have anything immortal or any kind of spiritual value to it, the man longs for it. The man is cursed to desire something that he can never receive. Okay, so I've already said this in a couple different ways, but I'm reiterating. Okay, so Kurtz recognizes this inherent conflict in the human being, all right, in all human beings, according to Conrad, as he is dying. And he cries out, repeating twice to emphasize the kind of choice of nightmares, which is a statement that Marlowe makes earlier in the novel. He says that he is facing a kind of choice of nightmares, right, in his life. The choice of nightmares that all men have to face is a choice between two different equal horrors. All right, one, all right, to face the terrible truth that there is no transcendent truth, that there is no such thing as a morally coherent life, that there is no such thing as a good man or a great man, all right, and there is no such thing as the immortal soul. To face that terrible truth, okay, and to embrace a bestial life, or to live a lie. Those are your options, according to Conrad's modernist atheistic nihilism. Okay, so what's the genre or style of this passage? Well, it's a symbolic journey narrative. It's a pilgrimage. Okay, so the final action and resolution of a journey narrative, of any journey narrative, okay, requires the protagonist to respond to and to return to their normal life, responding to the truth that they've discovered. Okay, they have to live in light of their discoveries. Okay, this is the purpose of a pilgrimage, to achieve some sense of enlightenment. Okay, so the Christian pilgrimage shows you, sort of offers you a kind of enlightenment, right? You are a sinner, but you are loved of God. You are loved by God, and God has given His Son in order to absolve you, to justify you in front of His righteous wrath, right? So there is hope for you. Okay, he also, to the Christian pilgrimage, also comes with other kinds of enlightenment. Ready? If you want to live a life to the full, right, which God promises, then He ultimately says, follow my law. Right? He gives you a model of behavior and says, hey, look, this is good. All right, and disobeying it is bad. All right, and if you follow that which is good, you will flourish, you will live. Okay, and if you pursue that which is wicked, you will ultimately die. All right, it might feel good for a little while, but ultimately you will be living out of line with your essence. It will harm you. Okay, so to be enlightened, all right, to achieve a kind of, from a Christian perspective, to achieve a kind of understanding of God is also to achieve a kind of understanding of who you are, what kind of world you live in, and what you should do. You have a destiny. You have a nature. Okay? But for the modernist nihilist, right, the question still remains. Marlowe has achieved enlightenment. Okay? But the light that he has seen that has illuminated the essential nature of man, this fractured heart, is certainly not a truth that is setting him free, but rather a truth that is condemning him to a life of horrors. So what does Marlowe do in light of that discovery? How does Marlowe go on living? Because he, unlike Kurtz, doesn't get the kind of reprieve of death. Kurtz dies. Okay? Marlowe, he gets really sick, but he gets better. He's got to go back to his life. He's got to live in response to this modernistic, nihilistic vision of man that is embodied by Kurtz. And ultimately, the final scene suggests how Marlowe is going to go about doing that. All right. So what's the title here of this text? It's part 3. It's the final scene. This is going to resolve Marlowe's pilgrimage by dramatizing, by illustrating his response to the inner truth embodied by Kurtz. Okay. So what's our central question? How does the style of Marlowe's narration illustrate the significance of this portion of his journey? It's ultimately the same question we've been answering in each one of our analysis as we've analyzed the language of the text and discussed how Marlowe's story illustrates the nature of what he is discovering in every aspect of his journey. And a quick recitation, right? Well, it's really simple. The final scene, devastating but simple. Okay, he returns to Brussels. He has a collection of Kurtz's belongings that were given to him by Kurtz and sort of entrusted to him because Kurtz, again, had no friends as he was dying. He was very lonely, right? And Marlowe was sort of the only person that he viewed that he could somewhat trust to deliver his personal effects to the people that he cared about, all right? When Marlowe returns back to Brussels, he's nursed back to health by his aunt. And then finally, he goes to visit Kurtz's intended, the woman that Kurtz had planned to marry. The woman actually, that is revealed to us to sort of deepen the tragedy, the person that Kurtz went to the Congo in order to elevate his social status enough to marry, right? He wanted to marry above his class, so he needed to go make a fortune in order to, so in other words, right, he went down to the Congo to sort of work for love, right? This sort of high human ideal. And when there, he lost all conception of it, okay? He betrayed her. He didn't even want to return to her. He took a native mistress while he was there. He fell in love with the Congo. Instead of telling her the truth about the man that Kurtz had become, Marlowe instead lies to her, telling her that Kurtz's last words, instead of the horror, were indeed her name. Okay, that she was the last thought that crossed his mind, which is the furthest thing from the truth. Marlowe ceases to speak, and the unnamed narrator, the naive narrator from all the way back in the beginning of the text, who had this sort of naive belief in the sacred fire and the inherent goodness and moral coherency of his society and also, by extension, himself. He notes that the waterway that they are sitting on seems to lead into the heart of an immense and unbroken darkness. And that is how the novel ends. Okay, tomorrow we're going to be analyzing this much more closely. Make sure that you're watching RenWeb for the attachment of your Unit 6 review guide so that you can go ahead and begin the process of preparing your response to the question that is going to be offered to you on that test. Have a great day.